The kingdom of Enchancia woke to the bright chime of the castle bells. Sunlight spilled across the polished stone walls, and in the courtyard the gardeners were trimming roses in neat patterns. Inside the royal castle, preparations were underway for the annual royal banquet, an event where nobles from neighboring lands came to dine, dance, and exchange gifts. Princess Sofia, wearing her lavender gown, hurried down the halls with Clover bouncing beside her. "Today has to go perfectly," Sofia whispered. Clover twitched his nose. "Perfect? In this castle? Ha! I'll believe it when I see it." Sofia smiled nervously. She knew Clover was joking, but he wasn't wrong. The annual banquet was the grandest night of the year, and everything had to shine, from the chandelier to the polished silver spoons. Sofia's sister Amber was already inspecting the ballroom, making sure her gown matched the golden drapes. James, meanwhile, was testing his juggling act to impress the guests, ignoring Bailiwick's worried frown. In the middle of the bustle, King Roland approached Sofia. "My dear, I know you always find a way to make things right," he said kindly, "but let's hope nothing goes wrong this time." Sofia nodded, though her stomach fluttered. She had recently been practicing new spells with her amulet of Avalor, and the temptation to use them for little improvements at the banquet was strong. After all, wouldn't guests be dazzled by floating trays of food or a magical fireworks display? Cedric the sorcerer, lurking nearby, overheard her thoughts. He rubbed his hands together, muttering, "If Sofia tries a spell and it goes awry, perhaps I can swoop in as the hero. Then everyone will finally respect Cedric the Magnificent." As the afternoon wore on, the castle gleamed, and the kitchens filled with the aroma of roasted duck, spiced apples, and pastries. Everything looked flawless, but in Sofia's heart, a restless spark whispered that one tiny magical touch could make it unforgettable. Little did she know, this small idea would turn into a royal-sized mess. When the guests began to arrive, the ballroom glittered with golden chandeliers and polished marble. Princess Hildegard curtsied gracefully, Prince Xandar showed off his fencing stance, and nobles lined up to greet King Roland. Sofia stood at the edge of the hall, clutching her amulet. "Just one spell," she whispered. "Something simple, like making the dessert float to the tables. That'll be helpful, not harmful." Clover hopped beside her. "Sofia, I got a bad feeling about this. Remember the last time? The dancing brooms?" Sofia bit her lip, but the desire to impress burned brighter. She raised her amulet and chanted softly. A glow spread through the hall, and suddenly, whoosh, the trays of pastries rose into the air. Gasps filled the room as chocolate cakes and strawberry tarts floated gracefully across the hall. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. Then the spell wobbled. The trays dipped and spun. Guests ducked as pies zoomed overhead. Amber shrieked as a custard tart splattered across her gown. James laughed until a pie landed squarely on his head. Bailiwick scrambled, shouting, "Control it, Princess Sofia!" I'm trying," Sofia cried, gripping her amulet. The glow pulsed brighter, and instead of calming down, the spell multiplied. Now chairs slid across the floor, and goblets clinked together in midair. Cedric rushed forward dramatically. "Fear not, everyone! Cedric the Magnificent shall fix this disaster!" He waved his wand, muttered an incantation, poof, and turned a pie into a squawking goose. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Nobles tripped, servants chased flying cutlery, and Clover leapt onto a chandelier to avoid the stampede. Sofia's cheeks burned with shame. Her one helpful spell had unleashed total disorder. King Roland's voice boomed across the hall. "Sofia, what have you done?" The grand ballroom of Enchancia Castle, which only an hour earlier had sparkled like a jewel, was now unrecognizable. Tables were overturned, ribbons dangled from chandeliers, and a sticky film of frosting coated the marble floor like an icy glaze. A pie-turned goose flapped wildly around the room, leaving feathers in its wake. Guests clutched their cloaks, dodging airborne cutlery that still occasionally zoomed by thanks to the lingering effects of Sofia's spell. Bailiwick, His normally tidy uniform, splattered with pudding, planted his hands on his hips and groaned. "Your Majesty, the banquet is a disaster. The guests are losing patience." King Roland surveyed the room with furrowed brows, his crown slightly crooked from ducking a flying goblet earlier. This was supposed to be a night of elegance and unity. Instead, it looks like... He gestured helplessly at the ruined hall. "Like a food fight in the school courtyard," James supplied cheerfully, balancing 3 jelly tarts in his hands. "Only way messier." Amber spun toward him, her eyes flashing. She stood in the middle of the hall, her once pristine golden gown now streaked with chocolate and cream. "James, this is not funny. Do you realize how humiliating this is? Our reputation is in ruins." James shrugged, grinning. "At least the goose is having fun." "Fun?" Amber shrieked, pointing to her ruined gown. "Does this look fun to you?" Sophia's stomach twisted painfully as she watched her siblings argue. She stepped forward, cheeks burning. "Amber, James, it's my fault. I tried to make things easier by using magic, and I lost control." Amber crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "You think this whole banquet is ruined because you just had to show off?" "That's not fair," Sophia protested, her eyes brimming with tears. "I wasn't trying to show off. I just wanted to help. I thought if I used a little magic, everything would be perfect." Clover, perched on Sophia's shoulder, muttered loud enough for Amber to hear. "Yeah, well, perfect doesn't usually come with goose feathers in the soup." Amber scowled at the rabbit. "This is no time for jokes." Meanwhile, Cedric was still scrambling across the hall, waving his wand as he chased the goose. "Come back here, you ridiculous bird. I command you to return to your pie form." He tripped on a sticky patch of frosting, slid across the floor, and landed with a splat in a bowl of trifle. The nobles gasped, and a few even laughed nervously. Cedric popped his head out of the dessert, his hat askew, and muttered, "I meant to do that." King Roland rubbed his temples. "Sophia, I expected better judgment from you. You know magic can be unpredictable." The weight of her father's disappointment pressed on Sophia's chest like a stone. She swallowed hard, fighting the lump in her throat. "I know, Father, and I'm truly sorry. I promise I'll fix this, somehow." Bailiwick sighed, trying to corral a group of frightened guests into a corner. "Fixing this will take more than promises, Princess. The kitchens are in shambles, the decorations are ruined, and half the nobility is ready to leave." The thought made Sophia's heart sink even lower. She glanced around the hall at the horrified faces of dukes, duchesses, and visiting royals. Some whispered behind fans, others shook their heads. The annual banquet was meant to showcase Enchancia's grace and harmony, but now it risked becoming a story of ridicule whispered across kingdoms. Amber's voice cut through the murmurs. "This is unforgivable, Sophia. You've embarrassed all of us." James stepped between his sisters, his tone lighter but still firm. "Amber, maybe don't be so harsh. Sophia didn't mean for this to happen." Amber folded her arms and looked away. "Intentions don't matter. Results do." Sophia's chest tightened. She hated disappointing Amber, but more than that, she hated the gnawing guilt that she had let everyone down. Clover nudged her cheek with his paw. "Don't listen to her too much, kid. You've messed up before, and you always find a way to make it right." "I don't know if I can this time," Sophia whispered back, though deep down she knew Clover was right. She had to try. Across the room, Cedric emerged from the trifle bowl, dripping custard and muttering under his breath. "If only someone appreciated true sorcery, this wouldn't have happened. Humph!" His eyes darted to Sophia, and a sly smile crept onto his face. "But perhaps this catastrophe could still work in my favor." While Cedric schemed and the castle reeled in confusion, Sophia clenched her fists, determination sparking beneath her shame. She had caused this disaster, and it was her responsibility to fix it. No matter how impossible it seemed, she would find a way to set things right. For the first time that evening, the young princess realized that a royal mess might be more than spilled food and broken dishes. It was a test of her courage, her honesty, and her heart. The chaos in the ballroom had not settled, despite bailiwick's best attempts to calm the nobles. The goose was still circling the chandelier, servants were frantically wiping custard from the walls, and Amber was fussing over her gown as though the kingdom's future depended on it. King Roland stood at the far end of the hall, shaking his head with quiet disappointment. Amid the commotion, Cedric wiped the custard from his robe and leaned against a toppled chair. His eyes narrowed as he watched Sofia apologizing to the guests and promising to make things right. Why does she always get the chance to fix things? He thought bitterly. I'm the royal sorcerer. It should be me saving the day, not that little princess with her shiny amulet. Cedric tapped his wand against his palm, a mischievous idea brewing. If he could make the mess worse, subtly of course, then he could sweep in at the last moment with a spell that truly impressed everyone. They would forget Sofia's blunder and remember Cedric the Magnificent as the savior of the banquet. He cleared his throat and stepped forward with exaggerated flair. Your Majesty, dear nobles of Enchancia, fear not. I, Cedric the Magnificent, shall take charge of this dreadful disaster. Amber, who was dabbing at her gown with a napkin, looked up hopefully. Finally, someone sensible. James muttered, Sensible? You mean slippery? Cedric ignored him. He raised his wand dramatically. With a flick of my wand and the power of true sorcery, I shall return order to this hall. Sofia glanced nervously at him. Cedric, maybe you shouldn't. But before she could finish, Cedric shouted an incantation. A crackle of green sparks shot from his wand, zipping across the ballroom. At first, the magic seemed to work. The goose froze in midair, the floating cutlery dropped neatly onto tables, and the goblets stopped rattling. Gasps of relief filled the room. Then the sparks flared brighter. The goose multiplied into 3 geese, honking furiously as they flapped around the chandelier. The spilled punch on the floor bubbled, rising into a giant gelatinous cube that began rolling across the room, scooping up chairs and tablecloths as it went. Guests screamed and scrambled to avoid being swallowed by the wobbling red monster. Cedric's eyes widened. Oh, dear. That wasn't supposed to happen. Amber shrieked as the cube nearly rolled over her shoes. Do something, sorcerer! I'm trying. Cedric flailed his wand, muttering half-remembered counterspells. Instead of shrinking, the gelatinous cube split into 2 smaller ones that bounced like rubber balls across the hall. James ducked as one flew past his head and splattered against a pillar. Sofia covered her mouth in horror. Cedric, you're making it worse. Worse? Cedric sputtered indignantly. I'm handling it. You try stopping runaway gelatin. Bailiwick dashed across the hall, ushering guests toward the side doors. This way, ladies and gentlemen. Quickly now. Stay calm. Stay calm. A cube rolled past him, carrying away a tray of silverware. King Roland's voice thundered. Cedric, control yourself before the castle is destroyed. Yes, your Majesty, of course, Cedric replied, though his knees trembled. He shot another spell at the geese. But instead of calming them, they grew larger and began flapping so hard that wind gusts knocked decorations from the walls. Amber clutched her tiara, shrieking, My hair! My beautiful hair! James, ducking and dodging cubes, laughed breathlessly. This is the best banquet ever. Sofia, however, was far from amused. Her heart pounded as she watched everything spiral further out of control. She had caused the first mess, but Cedric's magic was turning it into something much worse. Clover tugged at her sleeve. Kid, you can't let this clown take over. You gotta step in before the whole castle sinks in jelly. Sofia nodded, determination setting in. She stepped forward, raising her voice above the chaos. Cedric, stop! You're only making it worse. Let me try to fix it. Cedric turned, bristling. Oh, so you get to play the hero again? No, Princess, this is my moment. I will save the day, and everyone will finally respect me. But people don't earn respect by showing off, Sofia said firmly, her voice carrying across the room. They earn it by helping others. Her words struck Cedric like a blow, though he tried not to show it. For a moment, doubt flickered in his eyes, but pride won out. He shook his head, gripping his wand tighter. The ballroom continued to shake with honking geese, bouncing cubes, and shouting nobles. Sofia knew she couldn't stand back any longer. If she didn't take control soon, Cedric's complications would ruin more than just the banquet. They could endanger the entire castle. She clenched her fists, whispering to Clover, "I made this mess, and I'll be the one to clean it up." And with that, Princess Sofia prepared to face her greatest challenge yet. The ballroom was in shambles. 3 giant geese thundered around the chandelier, their wings whipping up gusts that scattered napkins and candles across the hall. 2 wobbling gelatinous cubes bounced gleefully like living puddings, swallowing anything in their paths: silverware, chairs, even a small tapestry from the wall. Nobles huddled in corners, some muttering about leaving Enchancia immediately, while bailiwicks struggled to keep the last bit of order. Sofia stood in the middle of the chaos, her lavender gown stained with frosting, but her chin lifted with new resolve. She had made the first mistake by letting her magic run wild. She had let Cedric's interference make it worse. But she refused to let the banquet end as a complete disaster. "Clover," she whispered, "I think I know what to do." The rabbit twitched his nose nervously. "Oh, great! Last time you said that, I ended up dodging flying silver spoons." "This time will be different," Sofia insisted. "I just need to take responsibility. No shortcuts, no trying to impress anyone, just honest, careful magic." Clover gave her a wary look. "You sure about this, kid? 'Cause that pudding blob looks hungry, and I don't think I'd taste good." Sofia pressed her amulet to her chest, taking a steady breath. She remembered what her mother had once told her. True leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about trying your best, even when it's hard. She stepped forward, raising her voice so everyone could hear. "Attention, everyone! I know I caused this, but I promise, I will fix it." The nobles quieted, their fearful murmurs fading. Even King Roland turned toward her, his expression stern but tinged with hope. Amber, still fussing over her ruined gown, rolled her eyes. "You've done enough, Sofia." James, dodging a goose feather, grinned. "Give her a chance, Amber. She's the only one brave enough to try," Cedric huffed indignantly from across the hall, his robe still sticky with trifle. "Brave? Foolish is more like it. Stand back, girl, and let a true sorcerer handle this." But Sofia didn't flinch. She lifted her amulet, its glow shining brighter than before. "No, Cedric. I started this mess, and I'll be the one to end it." The geese swooped low, honking furiously. Sofia steadied her hand. "Spirits of grace, lend me your light. Bring calm and order back tonight." Her voice was clear, confident. A wave of lavender light burst from her amulet, wrapping around the geese. For a moment it worked. They shrank, their flapping slowed, and they gently settled onto the floor. The guests cheered. "She's done it!" cried one duke. But the celebration came too soon. The cubes of jelly quivered violently, absorbing the spell's light. Instead of shrinking, they grew larger, their translucent forms glowing an eerie purple. Amber shrieked, "Sofia! They're worse!" Sofia bit her lip. I didn't expect that." Cedric smirked, seizing the moment. "Ha! Amateur mistakes! Step aside, girl. Cedric the Magnificent will correct this, if the king promises me a grander title, of course." King Roland glared. "Now is not the time for bargaining." Sofia ignored Cedric's arrogance. She wasn't giving up. She thought quickly. If magic alone wouldn't stop the cubes, maybe she needed more than spells. She needed teamwork. "James! Amber!" she called. "Help me lure the cubes toward the open doors. We can trap them in the courtyard where they can't hurt anyone." Amber gasped. "You want me to get near that?" "Amber, please," Sofia begged. "We can do this together." James, ever eager for adventure, grabbed a broken banner pole and waved it like a flag. "Come on, sis. Think of it as royal exercise." He darted across the hall, the cubes bouncing after him like eager pets. Amber groaned but followed reluctantly, holding up her skirt. "If I ruin another gown, Sofia, you're paying for it." While her siblings distracted the cubes, Sofia focused on reinforcing the spell around the geese, keeping them calm. Clover hopped ahead, shouting directions. "Left, James! Amber, faster! Don't let the goo catch you!" Bailiwick swung open the enormous doors with a grunt. "Hurry, Your Highness! This way!" James dashed through the opening, the cubes wobbling after him. At the last second, Sofia raised her amulet and chanted, "By light and heart, by truth and will, be still." The cubes froze mid-bounce and toppled into the courtyard with a gelatinous splorch. The doors slammed shut, trapping them outside. The hall erupted in relieved applause. Guests sighed, servants clapped, and James bowed dramatically. And that, my friends, is how we bounce back from disaster. Amber rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide a faint smile. Well, at least we're safe. Sofia's chest swelled with relief, though she knew the banquet was still far from perfect. The mess remained, and Cedric was still fuming nearby, plotting his next move. For now, though, Sofia had proved something important. To herself and to everyone watching. She wasn't perfect, but she was brave enough to face her mistakes. And deep down, she sensed this trial wasn't over yet. The royal mess was only building toward its breaking point. The heavy doors of the ballroom slammed shut, sealing the two massive gelatin cubes outside in the courtyard. For the first time since the banquet began, there was a flicker of calm. The nobles peeked from behind pillars, Bailiwick wiped sweat from his brow, and James did a triumphant little bow, as if he had just slain a dragon. But the calm was fragile. The grand banquet tables were overturned, chandeliers swayed dangerously, and half the food was either splattered on the walls or stuck in people's hair. The musicians sat glumly in a corner, their instruments covered in frosting. Even the geese, though calmed by Sofia's spell, were still waddling around, honking softly and nibbling at the remains of a ruined cake. King Roland's booming voice echoed across the hall. This was supposed to be a proud night for Enchancia. Instead, it's turned into a spectacle of disaster. He looked directly at Sofia. I trusted you, my daughter. But again and again, your magic causes chaos. The sting of his words made Sofia's throat tighten. She had fixed some of the mess, but the hall was still a catastrophe. She felt every eye in the room on her, judging. Amber sniffed loudly, dabbing her ruined gown with a napkin. Honestly, I don't know how we can ever show our faces in front of the nobles again. Lighten up, Amber, James said, balancing a candlestick on his head to make her laugh. It wasn't all bad. I mean, who else can say they saw giant jelly monsters at a royal party? Amber glared. This isn't a joke, James. Sofia clasped her amulet tightly. I'll make this right, she said softly but firmly. I have to. But before she could think of her next move, a sharp cackle cut through the hall. Cedric, still dripping with trifle, raised his wand with a smug grin. Yes, Princess Sofia, do try. But if you really want this mess fixed, you'll need me. Roland frowned. Cedric, you've caused enough trouble already. Trouble? Cedric feigned innocence. Why, I was merely attempting to aid your precious daughter. But very well. If none of you appreciate my brilliance, perhaps I'll simply keep this banquet in chaos until you do. Gasps filled the room. Cedric twirled his wand, and with a flash of green sparks, the ballroom doors burst open again. The gelatinous cubes bounced back inside, larger and stickier than ever. The calming spell on the geese broke, and they squawked, flapping into the air once more. The nobles shrieked and scattered. Bailiwick threw his arms up in despair. Not again! Cedric, stop this right now, King Roland thundered. Only if you finally grant me the respect I deserve, Cedric snapped. Make me Royal High Sorcerer, or watch your banquet crumble into jelly and feathers. Amber clutched Sofia's arm. He's gone completely mad. Sofia's heart pounded. This was her breaking point. She had tried to fix her mistake. She had tried to work as a team, but Cedric's greed was undoing everything. If she didn't act now, the banquet, and maybe the whole castle, would be lost. The cubes bounced higher, knocking over a chandelier with a crash. Sparks rained down as the crystal shattered. Guests scrambled for the exits. James tried to herd them toward safety, but the doorway was blocked by one of the wobbling cubes. Sofia stepped forward, her amulet glowing brightly. Cedric, enough! You're not helping anyone. You're only making things worse. Cedric sneered. And you think you can save them? You, who started this entire disaster? Sofia's cheeks flushed, but she lifted her chin. Yes, I made a mistake. But at least I admit it. At least I'm trying to put things right. That's what real magic is for. Helping others, not feeding your pride." Her words rang through the hall, silencing even Amber. Cedric faltered, his wand trembling. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. But then the cubes roared, a strange, gelatinous sound, as they fused into one enormous, towering blob that filled half the hall. Its quivering mass reached the ceiling, oozing down the walls like living pudding. The nobles shrieked again, and Bailiwick nearly fainted. This is impossible," Cedric stammered, stepping back. "I didn't mean for—" "Then stand aside," Sofia shouted. "I'll end this before it destroys everything." The amulet's glow intensified, bathing the hall in lavender light. Sofia's hair whipped around her face, and her eyes burned with determination. She was scared, yes, but she was ready. The banquet had spiraled far beyond anything she imagined, but this was her moment. Not to impress, not to prove herself, but to do what was right. With the castle trembling and the nobles panicking, Sofia prepared to unleash the strongest spell she had ever dared to cast. The fate of Enchancia, and her own belief in herself, hung in the balance. The ballroom shook as the towering gelatinous blob quivered, oozing across the marble floor like a tidal wave of dessert gone mad. Guests shrieked and pressed against the far wall. Amber clung to James's arm, and Bailiwick collapsed onto a chair, muttering about early retirement. The 3 giant geese flapped wildly overhead, honking in panic as their feathers scattered like confetti. Sofia stood firm in the center of the chaos, her amulet glowing so brightly that it cast lavender light across the shattered chandeliers and ruined banquet tables. For the first time that evening, she felt no hesitation. She had caused this mess, yes, but she would be the one to fix it, even if it took every ounce of courage she had. Cedric, backing away from the blob, muttered in disbelief. "It's too powerful. I can't control it." "Then don't," Sofia said firmly. She raised her voice, echoing across the hall. "Magic isn't about control for your own gain. It's about helping others. That's what I forgot tonight, but I won't forget again." Amber gasped. James whispered, "Go, Sofia." Closing her eyes, Sofia pressed her hands to the amulet of Avalor and whispered from the depths of her heart, "By the light of kindness, by the power of truth, by the courage to make things right, banish this chaos and bring peace tonight." The amulet pulsed, releasing a surge of radiant light. It wasn't wild or showy like Cedric's spells. It was warm, steady, and filled with the simple intent to help. The glow swept through the ballroom, wrapping around the enormous blob. The creature quivered, let out a gurgling sound, and slowly began to shrink. Its wobbling slowed, its sticky tendrils retracted, and within moments the monstrous pudding dissolved into harmless sparkles that rained down gently onto the floor. The geese, caught in the wave of light, shimmered and transformed back into ordinary pies, laying neatly on a serving tray. The chairs and goblets that had floated and scattered returned to their rightful places. Even the ruined tapestries seemed to mend themselves, threads weaving together in the lavender glow. The ballroom, while still messy, no longer looked like a war zone. The worst of the chaos was gone. When the glow faded, Sofia sank to her knees, exhausted but smiling. Clover hopped to her side, patting her cheek with his paw. "You did it, kid. You really did it." The room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Nobles clapped their hands, some cheering loudly. James whooped and spun around, accidentally knocking Amber's tiara askew. Amber, still stunned, adjusted it, but said softly, "Well, maybe she did save the banquet, after all." King Roland strode forward, his expression softening. He placed a gentle hand on Sofia's shoulder. "You were reckless, Sofia, and your mistake nearly ruined this night. But you also showed great courage. You admitted your fault, and you worked harder than anyone to fix it. That's what truly matters." Sofia looked up, eyes brimming with relief. "I'm so sorry, Father. I only wanted everything to be perfect." "Perfection isn't what makes a princess," Miranda, her mother, said kindly, stepping beside Roland. What makes a princess is the heart to admit when she's wrong, and the strength to set things right. And tonight, Sofia, you showed both. Amber sighed, folding her arms. Well, I suppose saving us from a giant dessert monster is something worth applauding. James grinned. You were amazing, Sofia. Next time, though, maybe we stick to juggling tricks instead of jelly monsters. The nobles chuckled, and the tension began to ease. Bailiwick, though frazzled, clapped his hands briskly. Well then, if everyone is quite finished nearly destroying the castle, perhaps we might resume the banquet. What's left of it? Sofia laughed softly. The hall was still a mess, and the night hadn't gone as planned. But somehow, it didn't matter anymore. The banquet continued, not as the flawless event Amber had dreamed of, but as a gathering full of laughter, shared stories, and a strange memory of teamwork and chaos. Even Cedric, sulking in a corner, received a few polite nods of thanks for trying, though he muttered bitterly about being unappreciated. Deep down, however, he couldn't deny it. Sofia had outshone him once again. Later, as the last guest departed and the castle grew quiet, Sofia stood at a window, gazing at the starlit sky. Clover hopped onto the sill beside her. Not exactly the perfect night you imagined, huh? He teased. Sofia smiled, resting her chin on her hand. No, but I think it turned out better in the end. I learned that being a princess isn't about making everything perfect. It's about taking responsibility and doing your best, even when things go wrong. Clover twitched his ears. That's a pretty good lesson, kid. Though next time, maybe no magico. Oh, food fights, huh? Sofia laughed, her heart light. She knew she would still make mistakes. Everyone did. But tonight proved she had the strength to face them. And though it had all started as a royal mess, it ended with a royal lesson she would never forget.